All right, I'm gonna jump into lesson 2. If you need lesson 1, come talk to me. I don't wanna record a video for that. So, lesson 2, we are gonna solve quadratic equations by factoring and write some equations ourselves. Here is your very complicated note version of this. I'm gonna ignore that and just go down to the problems. So, I'm not gonna do all these. I'm gonna do a handful of them. If I look at number 1, it says write me a quadratic equation in standard form given its roots. Okay. This is very simple. I'm going to take 2 sets of parentheses and I'm going to put x's at the beginning of both of them. Now I am going to take whatever these numbers are and I'm going to change the sign of them and put them in there. Okay. Now I'm going to dust off algebra 1 and I'm going to FOIL this. First, outer, inner, last. What I mean by that is I'm going to take the first 2 things, multiply them against each other. X times x is x squared. I'm going to take the outer 2 things. An x with a 4 is a plus 4x. Take the inner 2 things, minus 3x, and the last 2 things. And that's going to be a negative times a positive, so a negative. 3 times 4 is 12. If I did it right, my middle stuff here should be able to combine. So my final answer is x squared plus 1x, because 4 take away 3 is still 1, minus 12. And then the only special thing about a quadratic is that it needs to equal 0, so we tack that onto the end. This is the final answer. This is a quadratic equation in standard form with the given roots. Standard form, I'm going to write that over here. I'll just write it there. Standard form looks like this. A, B, C equals 0. Where I have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A, B, and C, those are constants. Those are just the numbers in front. The x squared, the x, and the equals 0, those are just part of it. So if I were to compare that standard form to this one here, my a term would be the number in front of the x squared, and it's an invisible 1. So my a term is 1, my b term is also 1, my c term is a negative 12. Okay. Let's do another one. Let's go down to 5, I guess. No, let's do 6 actually. It's got stuff going on with it. All right, I have 2 sets of parentheses, x is at the beginning of them, and I'm just gonna drop these in and change the sign. A plus 2 now and a minus 15. Okay, let's FOIL this out. First, outer, inner, last. Okay, let's combine the middle. And just don't forget the equal 0. Okay. All right. I know you've done foiling in the past. I know it might not be top of mind right now, but this should be some good practice. Let's go look at these ones with fractions, because I know you hate them. Ooh, this one has a negative fraction. That's even more gross for you. Well, nothing changes with our process. We start, I got bubbles, I got x's. I'm going to change the sign. I'm going to change the sign. And I'm going to FOIL. Okay, well, x times x is x squared. X times a minus 5 is minus 5 with an x. 1/3 times x, oh no, that's a 1/3 with an x. And then 1/3 times negative 5, that actually is a little tricky. If we remember though, if I'm multiplying fractions, well, what number goes underneath any solid number? There's always that invisible 1, right? So I can turn them both into fractions, and maybe this is easier. Now, I multiply top across top, and bottom across bottom. So 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 1 is 3. My answer is 5 over 3. But it's positive times a negative, so it's going to be a negative 5 over 3. Okay. Now we have to combine our stuff in the middle. X squared. And this can be a little tricky. Okay, I can understand that, but we can use our calculator to figure that out. If you do, you will get a negative 4 and 2/3 x, and then minus 5 over 3. But mixed numbers are gross and I hate them. So we are not gonna have that. We're gonna change it to an improper fraction. I can show you how to do that in your calculator too, but I'll show you the old school way here. If I have a 4 and a 2 over 3, here's how you change it back to an improper fraction. I take the denominator and I multiply it by the solid number in front. I take that and I add the numerator to it. What do I mean? I mean 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus 2 is 14. And the denominator stays the same. So I'm now going to take this and I'm going to swap it out for that because that's gross. And my final answer will look like x squared minus 14 over 3x minus 5 over 3. Okay, certainly more steps when you have a fraction, but the process stays the same. You just have to dust off middle school math about your fractions that you get scared by. All right, next page. This, I would argue, is the more important page. We are going to jump down to something like number 7 and number 9. And we're gonna ignore the other ones for now. That's not part of this lesson. So looking at number 7, I want you to factor this. So I'm going to do the exact opposite of what we did in the previous problems where I gave you, well, you wrote the 2 bubbles and you made them into one trinomial. Now you are given a trinomial and I want you to break it into the bubbles. We do that by using our cross, where A times C goes in the top and B just goes in the bottom. Well, where do A, B, and C come from? They came from our standard form that we had on the other page. A, B, and C. So we just want the numbers, the coefficients. We don't want the x's, we just want the actual numbers. So here, with number 7, my A term, well, that's the number in front of this, which is a 1. My B term, the number in front of this, which is 1. And my C term, well, that's the negative 30. It's important that you keep the sign with these. All right, well, what is A times C? 1 times negative 30 is negative 30. B is 1, that just drops there. So here's the tricky part. I want 2 numbers and they have to be the same 2 numbers. I want 2 numbers that multiply to make negative 30, but will add to make 1. And if we don't know that immediately, which I would expect most of you wouldn't, we need to just problem solve it. How do I multiply to make 30 happen? Well, let's list all of the ways. 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 times nothing, 5 times 6, 6 times 5. And once I start repeating numbers, I can quit. So, given these 4 choices, which one of these can I add or subtract to each other to make a 1 happen? No, no, no. It has to be 5 and 6. Has to be. But what do the signs need to be? I need to multiply it to make a negative, so one of them has to be negative. I need to add them to make a positive 1, so the only option is the 5 being negative. Negative 5 times 6 gives me 30. 6 minus 5 is 1. So, to do the final answer, I set up the bubbles just like before. I got 2 x's in the front. And these numbers here, these drag and drop right in. We do not change the signs. -5, +6. And those are our answers. Let's do number 9. Okay. I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to have a cross. A times C goes in the top, B goes in the bottom. My A term this time, well, it's still 1. Write that out. A is 1, B is 14, number here, and C, that's 33. Okay. A times C, 1 times 33 is 33. The B goes straight in the bottom. So I gotta find these numbers. Well, I don't know the answer off the top of my head, so I'm gonna go figuring out how many different ways I can make to multiply 33. 1 times 33, 2 times nothing, 3 times, well, that's 3, times 11, 4 times nothing, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times 3. Okay, so I'm repeating, so I can stop. So which one can I add or subtract to make a 14? Well, that's not gonna work. 3 and 11. But now I have to maybe look at the signs. I need it to multiply to be positive, so they both either need to be positive or they both need to be negative. But because the 14 is positive, I need a +3, I need a +11. All right, my bubbles, I put X's in front, and I drag and drop my numbers in. If you ever wanted to check to make sure you got it right, you could FOIL this out, and you should get this exact thing. Okay, I want you to ignore these other problems that have coefficients, or sorry, A terms that are not 1. This 3 in front, the 6 in front, that 4, that's gonna be a lesson for a different day. That's gonna require more steps. So that's it. On this, I think I had you guys do all of those problems. Okay, if you have any questions or need extra help with this, please let me know.